Hello, welcome back to the Fundamentally Fit podcast with me, your host, Andy Strong, and a good morning, good afternoon, or a good evening to wherever it is that you are listening to this podcast. We are on episode number 16. We've got a few interesting things to talk about today. We're going to be asking the question, and if you're looking at the thumbnail on this, or if you're watching on YouTube, oh, hello, if you're watching on YouTube, by the way, I'm waving, hi. But if you are looking at the thumbnail, think to yourself, damn, that is a tasty looking stack of pancakes. We're going to be asking the important question, does skipping breakfast lead to a hardening of the arteries? Yeah, not a question I'm sure you thought you were going to be asking yourself today, but there's been a research study done into that very topic, asking the question, does skipping breakfast lead us to having a hardening of the arteries? We're going to be jumping into that in a little bit later on. We're also going to be talking about skinny avocados, and we're also going to be talking about a few things we're not going to be talking about, which will become perfectly crystal clear shortly. But first of all, I'm a little bit sad, if I'm honest. I'm feeling a little bit sorry for myself this week. I'm back to work, which is not a problem. You know, seeing lots of my clients. Great to see them, kind of get them re-energized, re-motivated, get them kind of set up with new goals for the new season. A couple of clients have come back to me with some kind of unexpected things they want to work on, unexpected new goals. That's really cool. But it's my first week back after my holiday. My Californian tan is covered up and it's positively washing away with every shower, and every day it seems to be fading away. There's dark mornings, it rained last night on my run, and I'm just feeling a little bit sorry for myself. So I'm just going to get my violin out, and if you could just join in for a minute, I'm just going to just feeling a little bit like, it's nearly the weekend and it's not California. But we are here, it's episode number 16, we've got some important topics to talk about, and it's nice to be back here talking to all of you lovely people. I'm not really that sad, it's just, you know, it's like when you have a holiday, I'm still tired, getting over the jet lag. I mean, I'm not jet lagged anymore, but certainly still catching up on some sleep after last week's epic failure in that department. But today, let's crack on. We're talking about something we're not going to talk about. I was actually researching this week's podcast, and I came across a few things, and most of the topics out there were pretty heavy, to say the least. And I'm going to give you just one example. I'm going to tell you what it is. We were not talking about the study, but this is the kind of thing I came up against, trying to find something a little bit cheery for the autumn season, something to kind of lighten your mood now the sun's kind of disappearing a little bit each day. But this is what I was greeted with. Pregnant vegetarians are 3 times more likely to have a child who grows up to abuse drugs and alcohol. Yes, not very cheery. I did have a read through. It was interesting. I'm not going to go into it on the podcast because it is really depressing. But needless to say, if you are a vegetarian, I probably wouldn't worry too much. I would probably make sure you're getting a good balanced diet, absolutely. But I probably wouldn't go worrying that your child is going to be a drug abuser because you particularly like avocado and cucumber. It's probably not something you should be too stressed about. I also came across a really interesting article in the Daily Mail, I know, from Susie Burrell, and apparently, according to Susie, if we reduce the size of our coffee cup, and if we cut out the sauce and we swap our bread, we could lose 3 to 5 kilos a month. So thanks for that, Susie. That was that was enlightening. It needless to say, it wasn't a long article. But feel free to go and check that out. You might learn something. Maybe. And then I came to something that I did want to talk about. And that is diet avocados. Skinny avocados, in fact, which actually ties quite nicely into our main topic today as well. In Spain, they're about to launch at this month's Madrid kind of food fair. There is a producer who has basically come up with his own frankenfruit, and he has come up with an avocado that is 1/3 of the fat of a standard avocado. Apparently it is a mild flavour, has a juicier pulp, but it's only going to be available in Spain to start with. So you think to yourself, why do we need this? Why is this important? Why are we playing with fruit? Why are we changing the genetic composition of our avocado? And that's a completely different podcast and a massive rant in a completely different direction. But why have they done this? Well, the simple reason is, slightly technical, we have three three macronutrients. We have our protein, which are things like eggs and things like animal protein, so meat, steak, chicken, vegetable protein, which is going to be things like chickpeas and nuts, and then we also have carbohydrates, which is another macronutrient, which is things like the pancakes on the front of this podcast, things like bread and pasta and rice and all of those kinds of things, and then we have fat, and the important thing here is that carbohydrates and protein, so our meats and our proteins and our pastas and our carbohydrates, they are all 4 calories per gram. So for every gram of these foods you eat, they contain 4 calories. Okay, fat-based foods contain 9 calories per gram. So every gram of fat that you eat contains 9 calories. Okay, so more than double that of fat and protein. Now you still need fat. You need the right type of fat. You need healthy, good fats, unsaturated fats, polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, and you need less bad fats, which is your saturated or your trans fats. So I'm not going to go on a massive redirect onto fats today, but the reason this is important is because avocados contain a lot of fat. It is good fat, definitely. It is the type of fat you need in your diet, but it's really, really easy to overconsume. Because the average avocado is going to contain probably around 3 to 350 calories. So you do need to moderate your intake. And when you look on Instagram, which I have to say, Instagram has made the avocado its own type of modern art. Is you'll look on some of the salads and things on there. If you haven't been on there, go check this out, because some of them are quite really cool. They're great to look at, but you wouldn't want to eat them. You wouldn't want to eat anything else for the rest of the day. They'll have like this. They have this salad, and they have this beautifully fanned, chopped or whatever avocado, and then they've got olive oil, and then they've got cheese, and then they've got nuts as well. So they've got this salad that, on the face of it, you're looking and going, "My God, this is so healthy. This person's so amazing. How can I not eat like this all the time?" Actually, absolute stack load of calories, probably like 1,000 calories in what is a salad, and most people think is free food. Well, unfortunately, there's no free foods, but on the face of it, it looks really healthy. The nutrients you get from all of those foods, super healthy, good, well done, good choice. But understanding the calorie content can be really, really important, because you can go massively adrift in what you should be eating if you're stacking your smoothie full of protein, if you're having your avocado on toast for breakfast, and then you have an avocado with your side salad at dinner, or you're having maybe some oily fish with your dinner. All of a sudden your fat content for the day is super high, and so will your calories. So when we're looking at energy expenditure and the correct type of fat, we need to look at your diet and obviously balance that out. If you need help with that, obviously it's something I can help you with. But in terms of the skinny avocado, this particular skinny avocado contains 1/3 of the normal fat, so in principle you can eat a little bit more, but it's not going to be available in the UK just yet, but I can guarantee if it catches on, it will absolutely make its way over to the UK. And what I particularly like about this is this little avocado comes with its own label along the side saying it's a light avocado, because if you can stick that on anything, it will absolutely sell. So there we go. The skinny avocado, I had no doubt making its way into a blender, onto a salad, or crushing its way across your sourdough sometime soon. Right. Okay, they're the things we're not talking about. That's Susie Burrell. Feel free to check that out and her super useful health tips. If not, check out the skinny avocado coming your way soon. But we're going to jump into the main body of the podcast, because it is 8 minutes and 54 seconds, and I am going to start waffling if we don't start. So today, we're going to break this down into 2 parts. So this study has been done into the effects of skipping breakfast, and does skipping breakfast actually lead to a hardening of the arteries? I'm only going to touch on a small part of this particular study, not because it's bad, but just because actually the takeaway that I would like you to have from this is more based around how fatty deposits in the arteries actually work. Because if you understand that, then you're going to have a much more solid understanding of something that potentially could save your life, but also is going to be better grounding for the future than just looking at the minor details of this study, which actually was reasonably good study, but was also early doors, and actually his information is not as helpful just yet. So without me waffling about that, I'm actually going to jump in and tell you how this all worked. So lost the screen. I'm back. Okay, so this was reported in the Telegraph, in the Daily Mail, and in the Guardian. I'm just going to read you a short excerpt from the Guardian. Okay, so the Guardian had this to say: skipping breakfast may be linked to poor heart health. Research from Spain found that people who regularly skip breakfast are more likely to have atherosclerosis, a hardening and thickening of the arteries due to a buildup of fatty deposits known as plaques. Atherosclerosis doesn't usually cause any notable symptoms at first, but can eventually lead to life-threatening problems such as heart attacks and strokes if it's allowed to get worse. So in this study, they wanted to establish if a group of people who were working actually in a bank, they were aged between 40 and 54. And they wanted to establish if skipping breakfast was having an impact on the health of their arteries and the thickening of their arteries. So what they did is they had them record all of the food and drink they were eating, and they broke it down into different categories so they could kind of assess how much they were actually eating. So basically what they said is that everything you eat before 10 a.m. is going to count as breakfast. So everything you eat and drink counts as breakfast. Now, they were based the intake or the calorie intake on as a reflection of your total daily calorie intake. So basically, if you were an average male, nobody's average by the way, these numbers are not that helpful, but if you're an average male having 2,500 calories, or if you're an average female having 2,000 calories, then as a percentage, if you were eating less than 5% of your total daily calorie intake at breakfast, this would be classed as a skipped meal. So this would probably just be like a glass of orange juice or a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something like that. If you were eating between 5 to 20% of your total calorie intake at breakfast, this would be classed as a low energy breakfast. And then the final category they had was if you were eating more than 20% of your total calorie intake at breakfast, this would be classed as a high energy breakfast. And then they had everybody fill in these questionnaires for 15 days, filling out all of the details of what they ate and drunk. And the researchers also took assessments of the arteries. They checked to see if there was fatty tissue buildup, and they also checked to see if there was calcium deposits as well. And so they did a full screening to see how these individuals were kind of shaping up. So quite useful. They've got a good amount of people in the study. They've got a good way of recording it. They've picked their group, and they're kind of controlling it as much as possible. So I'm going to take a sidestep, because to really understand this study, we need to understand a little bit more about cholesterol, we need to understand a little bit more about fatty deposits, and we need to understand a little bit more about what actually atherosclerosis is. So this might get slightly technical, but please bear with me. I'm going to make this as simple as possible, but this is really, really important. If at any point you get a little bit confused with what I'm talking about today, hopefully you won't, I really, that's 3 reallys, that means you have to do it, that's the rules. I really recommend that you go over to the British Heart Foundation, and they've got a section on cholesterol, and they have a very short video. It's 1 minute 20 seconds. If you don't want to go there, go to the Fundamentally Fit Facebook page. You can open another tab now, and you can do that, and it's on my timeline for this week, and it's the 12th of October today, so it's going to be on there for at least a week or so. It'll be easy to find, and watch that video. It's really, really simple and explains this whole process in the simple terms. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth now, but go check that video out because it's super important. Simplest way to understand it, genuinely could save your life, so go check that out. Right. Cholesterol. Cholesterol is found in the foods that we eat, dietary cholesterol. It's found primarily in animal-based foods, so things like dairy products like eggs and cheese. It's also found in meat such as red meat, chicken, steak, all of those kinds of things. And basically when we eat the food, we take on the fat and we take on the cholesterol as well. So foods which are higher in saturated fats and trans fats, which are your bad fats, are going to be higher in cholesterol as well. Now, independently from that, the body actually produces cholesterol in the liver. So we have those two types. We have dietary cholesterol, and then we have the cholesterol that you can make in the liver. Now, the next bit's quite important, and it sounds complicated, but it really isn't. Cholesterol and fat is like a waxy kind of substance, and it basically it can't dissolve in water, it can't dissolve in the bloodstream. It's insoluble, so it will just float. So if you've ever had oil and vinegar, you'll notice that the two don't mix together. Same principle in the blood. Okay, so if you try and put fat or cholesterol in the blood, doesn't mix. Now, cholesterol fundamentally isn't bad. It has lots of roles in the body, and it can be used for lots of different things. So it has lots of leading roles in hormone production, for example. But for the cholesterol to get from digestion through to where it needs to be for the cells to absorb it, has to go through the bloodstream, and that's a problem because, as we said, it's insoluble, so it would just stick to the sides. So what happens is the body's super clever, and it uses what's called a lipoprotein, and it binds this lipoprotein together with the fat and the cholesterol, and then this enables it to be transported around the body, around the circulatory system through the bloodstream. Super clever. So what happens now? We basically we take the cholesterol along, and then it reaches the cells where it needs to be absorbed and used. However, if we have too much cholesterol in our body, then the cells become full, and then they reject the rest. This is then where the problem starts to occur. So our cholesterol's travelled down the bloodstream, it's been absorbed, there's too much left over, it gets rejected. This is a problem. This is our bad cholesterol. This is our LDLs, our low density lipoproteins. The lipoprotein being the section that has binded to the fat and the cholesterol to move it around the bloodstream, LDL, okay, or bad cholesterol. Now what happens? That cholesterol comes to the cells are full, it rejects it, turns it round, and then what happens is it will deposit that, the lipoprotein will deposit that cholesterol and that fat directly into the wall of the artery, and then over a period of time, this is what builds up those fatty deposits, which can then harden and also create blockages and restrict the blood flow. Now we have another character here. We have the second type of cholesterol that we're interested in, which is our HDL, or our high density lipoprotein. And the HDL, or the good cholesterol, known as a scavenger, comes along and it basically scoops up the bad cholesterol, scoops up the LDL, and then transports it back to the liver, where it can be repurposed or destroyed by the liver safely. Okay, so put simply, we need to have a higher amount of HDLs, so high highs, and a lower amount of LDLs, low lows. So more good cholesterol, less bad cholesterol. We need to be in a situation where, if that occurs, where we're getting the LDLs are being deposited into the artery wall, we want the HDLs to come along and scoop them up, take them back to the liver and destroy them. So if you have a diet that's high in saturated fat, processed foods, lots of animal products, the wrong sorts of animal products, like too much red meat, for example, then you're running the risk of actually having more of these bad cholesterols being deposited into your bloodstream, and over a prolonged period, this can be dangerous. If you have a situation where you've got more of the good cholesterol, you've got more chance of that being scooped up, which is a really good thing. So that's the difference between our cholesterol. That's our LDLs, our HDLs, our good cholesterols, and our bad cholesterols. That's the basic principle of how we end up getting those fatty deposits into the bloodstream. Again, they can't be absorbed. That's why they get stuck there. And if they can't be transported back and destroyed, they get stuck in the artery wall. There's a little bit more to this. So over a period of time, and this happens usually over a lifetime, and it depends on the quality of your diet over a long period of time, and this is why I focus on health first and long, meaningful lifestyle changes at Fundamentally Fit. It's why a 6-week diet isn't going to improve your health for the future, and this is a great example why. What happens is those fatty deposits start to build up. They start to restrict the blood flow. Okay, so now you've got a narrower gap. If you imagine the walls are closing in on both sides, you've got a narrower gap for the blood to flow through. Now that's a problem. It's at this point you might potentially start feeling side effects of this condition, where you might start getting cramps and things like that. Otherwise, this has very, very, if no symptoms at all. The only way to know if you have this condition is to go and have a blood test done at your doctor's, have your cholesterol checked. Same for blood pressure. The only way you know if you've got high blood pressure is to have your blood pressure checked. These two are known collectively as the silent killer. Not nice, but true. And we're going to sadly get to the reason as to how they are so dangerous. So we've now got a point where we've got fatty deposits. It's built up over a long period of time, and we're now restricting the blood flow. Now, a few things can happen. We can have that fatty deposit can build up to the point that it restricts the blood flow so much that it causes a problem. We can have an issue where one of these plaques can go hard and then break off, flow down the bloodstream till it hits a point where there's another fatty deposit and it basically blocks the artery completely, stopping the blood flow altogether. Or Third option is that the fatty deposit can form a blood clot, which can either block the artery where it is again, or break off and block it elsewhere down the artery, down the wall, down the artery's bloodstream. Now, here's what happens when that blockage occurs. One of two things. If the artery is supplying blood to the heart and there's a complete blockage and the blood can no longer get through, that is what's known as a heart attack. That's what causes a heart attack. So you obviously need immediate treatment for that, and hopefully it doesn't happen to you. If it does, I hope you get very fast treatment indeed. If the blood supply, the artery is supplying blood to the brain and is a complete blockage, then that will cause a stroke. And again, what happens here is the blood supply is providing oxygen to the brain. So if the blood supply can't come through, there's no more oxygen getting to the brain. And in this situation, that blockage needs to be cleared as quickly as possible, because this is where a stroke can cause brain damage, and quite often it can be irreparable brain damage as well. So you need treatment as fast as possible. So, we're quite a long way in. That's all we're going to go into today. I'll ask you a couple more points with this. There's a few lifestyle factors that affect this as well. So there's a few things. So age, your fatty deposits are going to potentially, in theory, grow as you get older, just because that's a lifetime of dietary. So potentially this condition is going to get worse as you get older, just because it's a lifetime of eating, it's a lifetime of fatty deposits. So depending on how good your diet's been over your lifetime will depend on how severe this condition may or may not be. There's also an issue where ethnicity plays a role, because certain ethnic backgrounds are more predisposed to having high cholesterol regardless of diet. And then there's also a situation where being overweight and obese means you're much more at risk of having this condition, because if you're overweight and obese, the chances are your diet is going to be poor. You're going to be eating more saturated fats, more fried foods, more red meats, more animal products, more pastries, all those kinds of things which have more saturated fat, have more cholesterol in, so you're much more likely to have this condition. And then finally, two more, and then there's the condition if you smoke as well. If you smoke, then this can cause damage to the artery wall, which actually makes it a little bit easier for those fatty plaques to kind of build up. And then finally, if you have high blood pressure, the pressure that this places onto the artery wall itself can cause damage, again, which makes it easier for these which does make it easier for these fatty deposits to start to build up. So, because there's a lot of lifestyle factors involved in this condition. If we now go back to our study, where we've been talking about the skipping breakfast, does it cause hardening of the arteries? Well, it's very unlikely that one meal in the day is going to have that direct impact, because actually, as we know, it's the cholesterol that you're taking on over the whole day. Now, skipping breakfast might encourage you to eat more poorly for the rest of the day. That might just be a trend that you see. And actually, when we look at the results they found that only 3% of the participants skipped breakfast. Most, 69%, had a low energy breakfast, and 28% had a high energy breakfast. Those who skipped breakfast, however, were more likely, based on these results, to be male. They were more likely to be smokers. They were more likely to have changed their diet to try to lose weight in the past year. And they were more likely to consume most of their calories at lunchtime. Most of them have a more unhealthy diet, which was higher in calories, it was higher in animal protein, it was higher in cholesterol, and it was lower in fiber, and it was lower in carbohydrates as well. So if we actually look at the 3% that skipped breakfast, we can actually see that these individuals fall into our category of individual who would be more likely to have high cholesterol in the first place and more likely to suffer from atherosclerosis, because as we said, as we know, men tend to suffer from heart disease more than women. So more of this 3% was male, so that fits the standard that we understand at the moment. They're more likely to be smokers, and as we've just said, smoking damages the artery wall, allowing fatty build-ups and plaques to occur more easily. They're more likely to change their diet to lose weight in the last year. So, as we said before, being overweight means you're more likely to be eating poor foods. We've also seen here that their diet is higher in unhealthy foods, more animal protein, which we know is higher in cholesterol, and also they're lower in fiber. Something which we didn't say is if you have there's two types of fiber, but if you have the right type of fiber actually mops up cholesterol and removes it from the body. So something when someone's got high cholesterol is to correct to their diet and increase the amount of fibre that they're getting, can be a really helpful way of lowering their cholesterol. But I'm not going to go into that now. So we can see there's a correlation here in the sense that, the individual that's more likely to skip breakfast actually is the individual who's eating quite disorderly anyway, is eating quite erratically perhaps, is not eating the right things, and actually that is more reflective of their diet and that type of individual, maybe more than saying, outright, if you eat breakfast, you're not going to have a hardening of the arteries. Now, this was the start of this study. It's an ongoing thing. This was the first set of results. So it was interesting, but you can't take too much away from it in terms of proving that, having breakfast prevents you from having high cholesterol or having hardening of the arteries. As you've seen from how we described today, this is a condition that happens over a long period of time. That's why it's important to have a long-term approach to your health, your fitness, and of course to your diet. You want to be reducing the bad fats, reducing the bad cholesterol, increasing the good fats, increasing the good cholesterol. But you need to be doing this obviously in balance with energy balance, to get in the right amount of calories. If you want to lose some weight, we need to do it in balance with that. If you've got a physical job, if you do a certain type of sport, all these things need to be balanced out well, so that your long-term health is good. Something we didn't say here, I'm just going to add on to the end. Over 40 health checks. I've mentioned this in the podcast before. Over 40 health checks on the NHS. They're free. If you fall into this category, go get them done. They're going to check your cholesterol. They're going to check your blood pressure. These are kind of the leading causes of death in the UK, is heart disease. And so, if you can change your diet, you can reduce your risk factor. You shouldn't stress and worry about this, but this is the kind of the deeper rooted reason why you should have a healthy, balanced diet. It really isn't just people like me saying, eat your 5 a day, don't eat fat. Because it's not as simple as that. All of these things can be eaten. They can be eaten in balance. They can be eaten in moderation. The problem is most people don't understand what moderation looks like, hence the fanned avocado. For someone who thinks that that's a really good idea, well, if you want to eat all your calories in one bowl, that's okay. You can, in certain contexts, you can do that. But for most people, that's misleading, because they then think that they can eat as much as they want because it's free foods, and this whole misconception that, you can eat as much of certain things when really you can't. But that's really what we're all about, is removing that confusion. So today, an interesting study. While it can't outright prove that skipping breakfast causes your hardening of your arteries, actually what we can say is that the individuals that skip breakfast are more likely to be the types of individuals who have poor diet, smoke, and will be the individuals who suffer from hardening of the arteries later in life. I'll be interested to see how this study progresses as they continue over the next few years. But if you fall into that category, if you're in the 3% and you tend to skip breakfast and you're a smoker, you keep trying to lose weight, you tend to eat more of your calories at lunch, and you tend to have more saturated fats, red meats, crisps, pastries, fried food, all of those kinds of things, maybe it's time to either get in touch with me or to find yourself a coach and actually think about addressing that and getting a better balance so that you're not building up fatty deposits, which unfortunately you can't get rid of them once you've got them. So if you get this situation later in life, your risk factor is pretty high. Okay, so that is episode number 16. We've talked about skinny avocados. We've talked about skipping breakfast. We've talked about, more importantly, what is cholesterol? How does it cause atherosclerosis? How can you avoid build-ups? And how can you potentially avoid a life-threatening heart attack and stroke? So I'm going to wrap it up there. Bang on 30 minutes. Boom. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I'm going to be back next week. I'm doing the Cabbage Patch 10K this Sunday. So if in Twickenham, so if you're there, come say hello. Good luck if you're racing. I've got friends coming up from Tough Fitty Tri Club in Worthing, so looking forward to seeing them. We've got House Full for dinner on Saturday. It's going to be good fun. And then I will be probably doing a race video, so I'll pop that up onto YouTube next week. If you want to see that video on cholesterol from British Heart Foundation, have a watch of that. Maybe come back and listen to this podcast again. It's on my Facebook page, Fundamentally Fit Facebook page. Really good, minute 20 seconds. If you're passionate about your health, or if you just if you value your health, take 1 minute and 20 seconds to go and watch that video. Strongly recommend it. Super simple and super easy to understand. Right, have a fantastic weekend, have a fantastic day, have a fantastic week. I will be talking to you next week. I'm Andy Strong with the Fundamentally Fit podcast. I will see you next week.